Sky looks like it wants to rain. The two forecast services do not agree whether it will or not, and especially if it will today or for the weekend. If I'm right, it is Thursday now. The grey water pond here maintains its level, and you can see that the vetiver is greening up. Temperatures have gone up. Mr. Cat over there just received his feed and is now happy. So this is an interesting scenery now. Well, as you can see, Tuscarora wanted to communicate and say hello, but of course there's the fence and she cannot get close. So yesterday Alexander and I took care of the horse's water supply, and also that one here. So there is the blind Tuscarora, who also wants to say hello. And we made sure that this thing is now full. Of course, there is this hose that we attached. Oh, be careful, be careful. I should probably get this a bit closer just in case. So that it has a little bit more room, because she wants to communicate. Yeah, that's what you want to do. But don't destroy your water supply. Well, it would be a bad thing. Let's not do this. Right. So this is now connected to a different pump, and therefore we get water here. This is still a temporary fix. This is work in progress. But eventually that animal water will get the water supply in a different way once we continue to do things in here. But like I keep saying, priority is on the Miyawaki forest and the Paulovnia part, and this around here is for later. Unfortunately, due to some mistake, as I believe, the Dewald electric weed whacker is out of service at the moment. I am waiting for a replacement, and once it shows up, I can then continue to do some maintenance here around the farmyard, because all that stuff, I don't want it to be tall when it gets dry, because then it becomes a fire hazard. That is something that I really don't need. So you can see that this is in its reproductive phase, and then it will cut off the water supply to the seed head so that the seed can fly away, and that is the moment when the fire hazard begins. So there's a bit of cleanup to be done, and I need my tool. I don't like the gas powered one, so I ordered a replacement. And of course this can be repaired, and there is a repair shop, but this is in Seville, and it means either drive there 2 hours, 3 hours one way, and then 3 hours back, so basically whole day, or use a service. And long time viewers know that those package services are a little bit challenging around here, and therefore I simply ordered a replacement to take care of the other one later, and then we have 2. So now it's time to feed the dogs, and then Alexander over there and I will go on a little road trip to get some supplies for the chicken. now filling that gap with another wobbler and also more plants. And I just checked on the soil sensors, there was one that wasn't reporting. Now it seems to do. So apparently it's not the antenna, but it was something else. So I'm now getting data from below the surface. So I just installed the chicken net all around the poultry netting. Of course the thing is a little bit old, and the Dehesa weed whacker is currently out of service. I'm waiting for the replacement, should arrive in a few days. This is electrified. Of course down there it is not perfect, and likely it will never be, because that's just the way things are. When you have uneven ground of any kind, the plan is not to let them out the whole day. So 24 hours. The idea is to let them out during sunlight hours. And then they go in there. There will be a light installed that will then call them in around sunset. But first we need to run the electrical wire and all these things. There should also be a camera to have an eye on them. But of course they're not going to be 100% safe. And based on some comments that I saw, and people, please, we can have a polite and decent conversation. There is no point in talking in an inappropriate way. So the idea is not to have them locked up in this coop like it were industrial farming. They should be out and do what chickens do. So they just were in there for the first few days, and their place is outdoors. So the chicken coop is basically a tree. I can't let them jump up there, but that would be ideal. So you have seen that they already stuck their head out to check out what the outside world looks like. So now I assume that they know where home is. They should stay in here and munch on the grasses and hunt for bugs, as good chickens do. And an hour before sunset, or maybe half an hour, it depends, I will then try to put them in and close that door there. It is important to irrigate the remaining plants here, so that's what he's doing. And we are making progress. It's steady progress, but of course it's not extremely rapid. But it doesn't matter. We kind of knew that this might take a whole month, and it appears that it will. But that's not a big problem. It gets done before the summer is there, and of course the irrigation is working out very well. I believe I can put in here some pictures from the sensors. So there is quite a bit of soil moisture, so we are definitely not on the wrong path. So over there clearly is a thunderstorm, and it looked in a similar way yesterday, but then it did not rain. We have been irrigating earlier today, and we have improved also the soil moisture. Now that we can measure that, it is pretty easy to know where we are. So if this comes here, that would be nice, so that everything gets drenched. Our moisture, if I recall this right, is now at 26 point something %, which isn't bad for this area, and it is more than enough for the plants that we are placing there. Let's hope that this will deliver the load here to us. Over there it is, so let's hope it comes. Alexander and I used the afternoon to put up the road pen again, so that at some point we can continue to work a little bit with the horses. Good morning. We had some rain last night, and also during the day, and it appears that we lost an oak tree. So I will go there and see what's what. Rain is good, but the issue here at this place is that rain usually comes in the form of a thunderstorm and not simply rain over a couple of hours. It is always a downpour. So as you can see here on the driveway, there is certainly evidence about the rain. Of course, our soil moisture sensors are also reporting positive things. That has been filled up a little bit. And I do wonder a bit what we are doing with all of that. We did order a mower for the BCS tractor, so that we could also mow. And the idea is to mow around the farmyard, just in case, because all this, when it's drying, and it will dry, then becomes a fire hazard. And that could then be a major issue. So we better do something to avoid that. It's always that problem. So once you have grazing animals, then you can use them, and you can follow what Mr. Savory, Alan Savory, talks about, and use the animals to graze and restore land that way. And I believe it had some positive effect. Or you can remove the animals, then you have good growth, but then you have also the problem that it still will dry out, and then you have another problem. And as you cannot rent animals for a week or so, or allow someone who has animals to graze on your property, the veterinarians that say that you cannot do that easily. Well, you can, but it's a complicated process. So let me finish the first sentence. So that means you have either a struggle or abundance like we have right now. And that abundance then turns into a problem after a while. So what's the problem with the veterinarians? So the thing is, this in Spanish is called an explotación. So a place where we exploit for some gain. That's the typical term in Spain for any kind of company. And now the issue is, the animals are then registered to one of these entities, to an explotación. And the explotación has registered also a piece of land where the operations of the business happen. And now the issue is that once you want to move animals from one place to another, and even if it is by foot or hoof, from one place to another, there might be neighbors, then you need to ask the veterinarians for what's called a guía. And a guía is a piece of paper where the veterinarians have given you the permission to transport the animals. Now the issue is, this is what usually happens when you sell animals. So if my neighbor wants to graze on my land legally, he would have to do this, transfer ownership of the animals. It doesn't have to be completely the legal ownership, but they have to be moved in the system. And then, of course, any restrictions and health issues come into play. So let's say the land next to us has a certain health issue, There were cases of tuberculosis, and then they come here to graze, then suddenly we also have it. And of course, these classifications are to prevent diseases. That's a good thing. And when it comes about moving animals out of the autonomous region into another, that then affects, so that movement might be restricted. So there are good reasons, but of course it also makes it complicated to say, why don't you just use the animals from the neighbor to graze on your land? Doing so without gear would be illegal, and there might be a problem if someone comes and checks and asks. Therefore, this does not really happen. And it also means that people who have animals also want to control the land for a significant period of time, like at least a year, and then they will stay there. They will stay there year round and never leave. So it's complicated. Of course, there is a little bit of transhumance still going on in Spain. I'm not really sure how that actually works, but I would assume that they have to go through the very same process and do it because they want to. And if people do not want to go through that process, well, then it does not happen. So, as a matter of fact, there is no way to have someone bring animals here for a grazing job and then leave again. It does not work. And that means that all this lush forage is now a little bit of an issue. And I'm scratching my head to figure out what best to do with it. Okay, so here we are at the planting site. What used to be our paddock, and now let's call it an area, A7. And the actual planting is not affected. But you can see there in the background, there is a tree that has fallen over. The question is, why? Might be lightning, but let's go close and have a look. So there was a tree standing tall there in the center, and now there isn't. And yesterday Angel and I looked at an aerial picture of this area and figured out where to put the water line and where to put more wobblers. I guess that has changed now a little bit. At least it's not affecting anything of the planting, and it has not destroyed anything of the planting, because that area was excluded anyway, because there were trees already standing. But yeah, there is one tree left, one tree less. So it's split in half like they usually do. Well, there was an issue already. This does not look very healthy. Let's see how those leaves look like. If it has been making something towards growing acorns, and to me it doesn't look like it. So the flower basically is not there. There are old bases for acorns. There you might be able to see it. There are quite a few actually, here on the other side as well. So the one right next to it, I'll show you that in more detail in a moment, is certainly looking better, and it has those flowers that will later form the acorns. While this one apparently had an issue for a while. But then, given the thickness of the trunk, this has been older. So not like the others that are said to be 300 years old. This one is almost 3 times as big. And of course they don't live forever. So at some point something happens. Let's try to go in here a bit. There's whitish stuff there. And this here, yeah, this is already soft. So that thing was rotten from the inside. Then it just took a little bit of wind. Which we had, and then it fell. See? So this is a very good thing that we are planting, including the same species, because we will not see these trees when they are big, but at least we're making a contribution to make sure that this species of tree will continue to exist. Thankfully, it did not fall on any of the current plantings or infrastructure for that. Well, what I just said about the infrastructure is not entirely true. So this water line here is below where it fell. So you can see there it fell, and this water line continues here. There were no wobblers attached to it just yet, and there should also be on the other side, but yeah, this can be taken out. I like the light, that's why I'm showing you this, and all the moisture on the plants. It's about 9 o'clock, so this looks pretty nice. And yes, the pickup is still there. We are waiting for the mechanic to show up here. Of course we could tow it, but we have made this path already, so we can just continue using it for a while. Of course, when it stopped at the perfect place for that. But so be it. The other thing that I wanted to mention is, so as you can see, we plowed this area and the one next to it, and now we are waiting a few days more so that the plants that are in there, those stems, become a bit softer and easier to split when the harrow goes through it. And then he will come back and attach the harrow. The harrow is sitting next here, and so he will come back. He left the harrow and he needs it for other jobs, so that secures that he will come back. And then after the harrow he will then seed, and then use a drag to bury the seed, and then we have Sunweb and friends here. And once we are free with other things, that is basically a summer job. We can do this until the end of August, but of course the sooner the better. Angel and I will then plant here by using the excavator to make some deeper holes, Paulovnia trees here in this area. We will start at the far end and then work in straight lines our way back so that the damage that we do is minimal. Basically, we destroy the seeded Sunweb and friends on the line of trees. And as the trees will fill this, there isn't really a problem, and after all, the sun wind friends is just for biomass, to get more roots into the ground. And my soil sensors, and I can show you the data here in this clip, have shown something very interesting. So there is one sensor that sits below the surface, so maybe at 5 centimeters depth. So it sits in the area where most activity happens, and the other one sits at 20 centimeter depth. And the one at 20 centimeter depth shows something very interesting. The soil moisture goes up when there is water from above, and then very rapidly, a lot quicker than the other, goes down. And I attribute this to the fact that the soil is still very sandy, has little organic content in it, and therefore the water basically flows away, because sand does not hold any water. So as long as that is the case, we don't have a lot of moisture stored in the soil, and I hope that the Miyawaki forest will then change this by adding more and more things on top. This will not change the lower layers, but we grow the water holding area from above. And apparently there seems to be some consensus in the agroforestry tribe bubble that this is how it is working, and you should always put stuff on top. So I think that makes sense, at least by applying simple logic. Again, I'm not an expert on this. I just read, listen, and observe. So it appears that this is the way to go. And as soon as we have leaves falling down in a Miyawaki forest, or in any forest, doesn't matter, the Miyawaki is just a method how you plant it. That should then solve this problem over time. Of course, it's a long time. I am eager to learn how this data will look like in 3 years. And of course, we will have data for all these 3 years then. So ask me in 3 years and I will tell you.